setting up.
And buy some Bitcoins.
Oh, okay.
Great. Chair, if you want to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Energy and Environmental Sustainability Commission for the City of Milpitas to order. This is May 19th, 2021. And let's go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now let's go ahead and do a roll call of which commissioners are attending.
Okay, great. I'll start with the roll call. Commissioner Badesha. I did not see Commissioner Badesha join yet. Vice Chair Kong.
Here.
Commissioner Lingle.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez.
Here.
Commissioner Salian.
Here.
Commissioner Sexton. I'm
Here.
sorry, Chair Sexton.
I'm here.
Commissioner Shreve. Great. And then we also have our alternate commissioner, Edmana.
I'm here.
Great.
And council member Chua's here as well.
Yes, Councilmember Chua. All right. So Elaine, could you
Do you have
me,
one?
at
We
this
do have-
point, do we have enough, do we have an open seat to seat alternate Commissioner Admana?
We do. It looks like Commissioner Badesha is not here, so we can seat alternate Commissioner Edmana tonight.
Okay, wonderful. So we can have everyone participating.
And we have a great turnout, so that's exciting.
Yes. All right, the next item to handle is the approval of today's agenda. So Elaine was good enough to send out our agenda last week, Friday. I hope you've all reviewed it. And do I hear a motion to approve the May 19th, 2021 agenda?
A motion to approve the agenda for May 19th.
Thank you, Commissioner Lingle. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Thank you, Commissioner or Vice Chair Kong. Appreciate it. And Elaine, would you be able to handle the roll call vote?
Yes. Vice Chair Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Lingle,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Commissioner Salian,
Aye.
Chair Sexton,
Aye.
Commissioner Shreve, Commissioner Shreve, your vote on the agenda, please.
Is your mic on? Okay. Maybe no vote.
Aye.
Oh, now we hear you. Thank you, Commissioner Shreve.
Thank you. And alternate Commissioner Edmana,
Aye.
thank you.
Thank
So the agenda is approved. That passes unanimously.
Okay, motion passes. And now we are on to the approval of meeting minutes from the last meeting, which was the April 21st, 2021. Do I hear a motion to approve these meeting minutes? I hope that you've reviewed the draft meeting minutes. So is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Salian. Do I hear a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Kong. And let's do the roll call vote to approve the meeting minutes of the last of the April 21st.
Okay, great. Thanks. Vice Chair Kong,
Aye.
Commissioner Lingle,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez,
Aye.
Commissioner Salian,
Aye.
Chair Sexton,
Aye.
Commissioner Shreve, oops, Commissioner Shreve, I did not hear your vote.
Abstain.
Okay. Alternate Commissioner Edmana,
Aye.
great, thank you. So that approval of the minutes passes.
Great, thank you. Our next item on the agenda is a public forum. Do we have any members of the public, Linda, that would like to address the commission?
I do not see any raised hands at this time, Chair Sexton.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on then to the next item, which is announcements. Do we have any announcements to make at this time? I have just one minor one. I'd like to say thank you for to the Public Service Department for providing the litter pickup kit, which I used to do the litter pickup this month. I think we have one more weekend for promoting litter pickup, and I think it's in corresponds with the creek cleanup campaign that's going on. So I was able to pick up, my husband and I went out with our 2 kits, and we were able to fill up 2 garbage bags of litter from the side of the road that we walked along. And also I retrieved half a bag of recyclable items like empty water bottles and things like that. So those were all taken off and disposed of properly. So hopefully it makes the road look a little bit cleaner and neater on that. Are there any other announcements? Okay, then let's move on to our business items. The first business item for tonight is the update on the draft of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan, which is definitely at the top of my mind with the warm weather coming up. And this covers many years. I think it's a 20-year plan, Elaine?
Yes, I'll go ahead and introduce Harris Siddiqui, our principal engineer, and Linda Grand, our administrative analyst, both of them from Public Works, who are here tonight to provide the presentation and the overview of the draft urban water management plan and our water shortage contingency plan. Both of these documents are required by the state. So they'll give you an overview and are available for question and answers.
Great. Thank you, Elaine, and good evening, commissioners. Thank you for joining us this evening. Excited to describe to you our urban water management plan and water shortage contingency plan and receive your feedback. Next slide. So today we're going to talk about an urban water management plan overview. What really is this plan and why are we required to create them? Going to dive into Milpitas's water supply portfolio. Going to talk about our compliance with the 2020 water use target. Going to look to the future at our water demand outlook. Then we're going to transition into the water shortage contingency plan and conservation measures. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to focus on our water conservation outreach and rebates updates and resources available for residents, concluding with some next steps. Next slide. Great. So I want to start with what is the urban water management plan and what really is the purpose of creating these plans. So as Elaine mentioned, the state does require this as a regulatory compliance document. All California water agencies have to submit an urban water management plan every 5 years. So our 2020 plan is due by July 1st this year. It is called the 2020 plan because of the cycle, and it has our 2019, which is our most updated usage data as well. It can be a little confusing with the naming. This is a playbook for existing and future water supply needs. We're really looking at 25 years out. So we're looking to 2045 to make sure that we have a reliable supply to meet our future demands. We need to report compliance with our 2020 water use target. We look at supply reliability, and we also outline drought preparedness strategies. This is a city council adopted public document, which can be referenced for future water supply assessments and planning efforts. Next slide. So looking at the city's water supply portfolio, the city purchases treated water from San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, known as SFPUC, and Valley Water. The water supply portfolio is split between Valley Water. We get 30% of our water from Valley Water. You can see that is given to the southern portion of the city in yellow. And then we get the rest of our water from SFPUC, which is the northern portion in blue. We also receive a small amount of recycled water from the City of San Jose South Bay Water Recycling Program, which is used for irrigation when applicable. Next slide. So with the adoption of the Water Conservation Act of 2009, the state had a goal of reducing water use by 20%. This means that every water agency had to determine a 2020 target using a formula that was outlined in the legislation. The city of Milpitas's 2020 goal was 146 gallons per capita per day. You can think of that as gallons per person per day. The city not only met this 2020 target, but water use is significantly lower thanks to residents continuing to conserve water. As you can see, our actual 2020 gallons per capita per day usage was 108, which is much lower than the 146 target. If you look to the graph to the right, despite the fact that the city's population increased from 68,000 to 78,000, water consumption decreased overall in average from 9.6 million gallons a day to 8.4 million gallons a day from 2013 to 2020. This is an approximate reduction of 13% and really is thanks to Milpitas residents making water conservation a Milpitas way of life. And this conservation trend is continuing. Next slide. So now looking to the future, trying to figure out our water demands in 2045. So the city's 2045 water demand is projected to increase by 4 million gallons per day from our current 2020 usage, which is approximately a 48% increase. This goes in line with the city's population projected to increase by approximately 55%. From 78,000 to 120,000. The future population estimates are informed by the 2040 General Plan, California Department of Finance data, and the recently completed Draft Water Master Plan, which was presented to City Council last night. So population increase is really the driving factor of the increase in water demand. Next slide. So we're going to take a short section here just to see if there's any questions on the urban water management plan before I dive into the water shortage contingency plan.
Any questions for Linda? Just one comment. I had no idea that the city's population was anticipated to increase that much over the next few years. So that's a huge increase.
Yes, they're seeing a lot of growth. Great. Well, if there's no other questions, then
Let's see, I have one more. With regards to that population growth, and I guess, just even the population growth that, we showed since 2013, I believe, in the previous slide. Do we have a sense of where the households are growing? Is this into the apartments, or is this into, new housing that has yards and things like this? Is there a sense of where this growth and how we are going to be supporting such growth like this? Will it be in condos and apartments, or?
So,
And I can answer that hi, this is Harris. So, and concert with planning, the trend is high density development. So it's if you sort of look at the makeup of the development as it is now within TAS, it's primarily high density. So that's barring any miracle, it seems like that's going to be the trend going forward, is making use of limited available parcel space with high density development. So not necessarily a lot of backyards, but obviously that would be balanced with parks and open space.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
great. If there's no other questions, then I'm going to dive into our 2020 water shortage contingency plan. So this is a standalone. Oh, can you go back one slide, Ron? Thank you. This is a standalone plan. This is a new requirement from the state to do a separate water shortage contingency plan. This plan is really focused on being prepared for droughts and outlining the actions and protocols that we're going to take when we actually are in a drought. This is, as I mentioned, this is a standalone plan. So it is informed from all of the analysis done in our urban water management plan, but this plan can be adopted outside of the 5-year urban water management plan cycle. The water shortage contingency plan defines water shortage levels and the associated actions and responses to those water shortage levels. Next slide. Okay, so let's look at what happened in our last drought. So the last drought began in 2013. And as you can see here is a brief timeline of the significant milestones from the state and from the city in addressing this drought. The most severe conservation mandate at the height of the drought was in 2015 with a 30% call for reducing water use from 2013 levels. In 2017, the governor ended the drought state of emergency while keeping water restrictions wasteful practices in order to make water conservation a California way of life. This drought cycle helped kind of explain that significant reduction in Milpitas's water use beginning in 2013, which we presented in the earlier slide. So despite the fact that in 2017, the conservation mandate was lifted, water conservation in Milpitas has continued, and we are seeing a trend of reducing consumption. At this 30% call refers to kind of our water shortage level 3, which I'll get to in our next slide, describing the water shortage levels. Next slide. So with climate change, increased temperatures, decrease in estimated rainfall. That's really all what led to the state wanting us to prepare for these future droughts that are going to become more likely in California. This water shortage contingency plan is to really help us have a guidebook of what to do when we are in a prolonged drought. The water shortage contingency plan covers the shortage actions and conservation measures. We talk about in the plan our response level actions. We develop procedures for communication, monitoring and reporting, and a new requirement of an annual water assessment. We also evaluate the financial consequences of these droughts and how it could impact the city. The state has a new direction for agencies to have 6 standard water shortage levels. So this means that level 0 is normal. This is 0% mandatory call for conservation, up to level 6, which is where you're the worst point in a drought and you need to conserve by 50% compared to pre-drought levels. One thing to note is that this water shortage contingency plan can be used for any water shortage emergency, such as an earthquake. Next slide. So building off of those 6 shortage levels, here are some examples of conservation measures that we're proposing for 3 out of the 6 levels. So you can see in this green box, level 0, this is where we are now. This is Milpitas water conservation as a way of life. All of these measures are in our current water waste ordinance. As we get through the water shortage levels and the drought conditions become more extreme, then we add on additional measures, and it increases the responsibility, and the other measures become reduced. For example, in level 2, the outdoor watering schedule goes down to a 2-day-a-week schedule. And we add measures such as the city decreasing fire line flushing, and we don't allow filling of ornamental lakes and ponds. So this is a 20% reduction from pre-drought levels. As we get down to level 5, which is a 50% reduction in consumption in response to a very severe drought, this entails response actions proposed, such as not allowing any irrigation, only washing cars at commercial car washes that recirculate water, and really trying to get to as close to 0 water waste as possible. So as we go through the different shortage levels, depending on how severe the drought is, as you can kind of see that it gets more intense in each level, and they add up on each other. So any restrictions that were added in the previous level are still apply, and we just add additional measures. Next slide. So to help us kind of evaluate what shortage level we are in, the state is now requiring all water agencies to conduct an annual assessment. This annual assessment will take our supply outlook given to us from Valley Water and SFPUC, and then we're going to look at Milpitas's projected demands to look to see if the next year we'll have a water shortage. We are required to start submitting these assessments in July 2022. So once we actually complete the annual assessment, there's kind of 2 different pathways. So if the assessment shows that there's no shortage identified for the following year, then we can submit the assessment to the state and there's no further action needed by the city. If the assessment does result, then the shortage level is identified in the annual assessment if there is a shortage level defined. And the next step would be that the city council would adopt the water shortage level identified in the assessment and implemented shortage response actions per our water shortage contingency plan. This will include communication, compliance, and enforcement actions. Next slide. So that really gives a big overview on our water shortage contingency plan. But as I mentioned, we are really preparing for future dry years. And an important component of that is to continue doing outreach on our current programs and expanding into new programs as well. So really exciting news is that the city is upgrading all of our water meters into smart meters. This is part of the ESCO project that you guys have gotten presentations on before. So we are currently in the process of that, and we are working to set up an online portal for residents to be able to log in and see their near real-time water use and get high usage alerts. So it really will be easier to track your water usage. Valley Water recently announced that they are going to be increasing the landscape rebate amount. And since the city cost shares with Valley Water, Milpitas residents will get $3 per square foot of turf converted into drought tolerant plants starting on July 1st. In addition, we are planning to do summer messaging focusing on our voluntary outdoor restrictions and tips for our residents. And all of our water conservation information can be found at savewatermilpitas.org. And now I'm going to dive deeper into some of our Valley Water rebate programs. Next slide. So as I mentioned, Valley Water does have the landscape rebate program, which focuses on converting the lawns to low water use landscape. In addition to that program, Valley Water has several other resources to help our residents conserve water. So they have the WaterWise Outdoor Survey Program, which a trained professional will actually come to your house and look at your irrigation system and do an analysis to see if there's anything that can be upgraded or any leaks that need to be fixed. There's a do-it-yourself indoor survey kit, which is a really cool resource that it's just an online tutorial and walks you through how to find common leaks and what to keep in mind for if you are seeing higher usage. And Valley Water recently started an online shopping cart where residents can order for free water conservation devices, such as low flow shower heads, aerators, and more. The city also offers water conservation kits. We've been giving those out at past events, and due to COVID, we're still in talks of how to better give those out in the future, possibly doing a drive-by kit pickup similar to the litter kits, and that's been in discussion. And then Valley Water has a gray water laundry to landscape rebate program where you actually connect your laundry machine, and the water that you use, as long as you use environmental soaps, can be used to go to different certain types of trees and plants to irrigate them. Next slide. The city also cost shares with Valley Water on rainwater capture rebates. So Milpitas residents get increased rebate values for rain barrels, cisterns, and rain gardens. So this is really great resource to kind of help harvest the winter rains that we do receive to use in our gardens, in our yard. Next slide. Valley Water also offers irrigation equipment rebates. These include converting sprinklers and other high water irrigation to weather-based irrigation controllers, drip irrigation, and other smart irrigation rebate upgrades. So all of these programs can be found on our city's water conservation page. We do link to all of Valley Water's resources. We do also provide other tips and resources to really help our residents learn how they can save water and how they can continue to make water conservation a Milpitas way of life. Next slide. So just kind of wrapping up. So timeline for the Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan. We're here on May 19th to discuss with you. And then on June 1st, both documents will be made available to the public on the city's webpage. And then on June 15th will be the city council adoption meeting. We have to submit both of the plans to the state on July 1st. And once the plans are finalized, we are drafting a new water shortage ordinance that aligns with our water shortage contingency plan. We are hoping to have this ordinance adopted by the city council sometime in August after council resumes. Next slide. Thank you. Please let me know any questions or feedback.
I have
Commissioner Lingle?
Yes, I've got a couple. Okay, so we are in a water shortage situation. That annual assessment has been done, and we know we're in it now. Is that right?
No, so we haven't officially, so the actual doing the assessments, the official assessments isn't going to start till 2022.
That's the next.
Currently, we are experiencing a dry year, and Valley Water is asking residents to conserve 25% voluntary compared to 2013 levels, and SFPUC is asking for 10% voluntary, but we are still technically in that stage 0 normal conditions because everything is voluntary.
Okay, all right. I believe, let's see, over the last couple of years, we've been trying to adapt our park watering systems over to gray water, I believe. I don't know if it's gray or recycled. Where is that program now?
Eric, you wanna
I can take that on, Linda. Some of the parks have been converted where recycled water infrastructure has been installed. Obviously, there's 2 components to it. One is we purchase recycled water from San Jose from South Bay Water Recycling. So they're limited in their capacity to deliver recycled water. At one point, that there was too much water, not enough users, and now the opposite is true. There's too many users and not enough water. And you have sites like Levi Stadium and the new Apple campus that are connected to that system. So that's sort of the first challenge is South Bay looking and addressing their what's known as phase 2 as part of their 2013 master plan. The second component of it is the infrastructure, so installing those mains, and it's a balance of is it feasible, does it make sense to install a recycled water line a few miles down to get water to one park, because recycled water you can't connect to single family homes. There's a regulatory component aspect to it. So it's a balance. If the system's there, then to convert to recycled water is a feasible project. It's not exorbitantly expensive to do, but if there's no system adjacent or nearby, then installing that infrastructure gets quite pricey, and it definitely will take some effort and coordinating with South Bay and looking at their future program and future recycled water phase 2 projects and when that'll come online.
How many parks are set up now for recycled water? We converted parks in 2017. The project predates my time in Milpitas, so I can look and find out. I want to say it's 5 or 6.
We can get back to you with that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lingle.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I can tell you that the district has partaken in the reclaimed water, and we have 4 sites on the north end of town, and our newest elementary school has piped reclaimed water to it, along with the new city parks that is in the process of final planning stages. So I can share that with you.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Strebe. And I do hope that we'll be able to bolster the supply of recycled water, since it makes sense. But again, if the supply of recycled water isn't 100% there, then adding new purple pipes may not make sense. So yeah, the supply and demand has to be balanced.
Yeah, I have a question over here, please.
Yes.
Okay, why do we not?
Commissioner Stallion, we can't see you. We're seeing the room that you're in, but we're not seeing you.
Oh, you're not seeing me? Oh, I'm sorry. How about now? Oops. One second. Okay. Now can you see me? Okay, my question is, for last 43 years, which I've been here in California, we always have this issue about water, okay? And it is always the citizens have to cut the water, cut this, cut that, and everything. Instead, why don't we try to have this desalination plants, since we are on the bay? And it is much easier to get the water from the sea, which we can get it. And there are many countries which go ahead and do this thing. They get the salt water, convert it into fresh water, and the citizens of that particular areas are not affected with this at all. It is, I think, it is a much better investment and much better way to do it, rather than every time we have it is 20% cut, 40% cut, used recycled water, or start get the rain harvesting and everything.
Would anyone like to take that question?
I can attempt to provide some input and insight. Part of our effort before we get to a desalination project or thinking about something like that is to expand our portfolio with groundwater wells, which will help us in some of these drought situations with our own system that we can rely on. That ultimately the groundwater basin is managed by Valley Water, but we're mostly limited to the treated water we can purchase, not the groundwater from groundwater wells that we can connect to the system and use. So that's one of the approaches that was presented in the Water Master Plan, which, as Linda mentioned, we took to City Council last night. That's certainly a long-term project, but we do have a few wells now that we can look to convert to full-time. They're currently classified as emergency wells. Desalination, as far as I know, is extremely expensive. So the front end costs of that and commitment to do that, and also the land to build that type of plant. I know nothing about desalination except for that a lot of countries may do it, but local agencies like us, I think the upfront costs would be quite high, and I think the price of water to make up for that cost would be quite high, and would be a hard sell, I'd imagine, for the residents. I don't know the cost, so I can't give you an exact number, but I do know that it's extremely high.
Okay, I have two questions for you, sir. My first question is getting this the water from the well, or whatever you say, or is it a bore well, or what kind of a well are we talking about?
We have Pinewood Well, for example, McCandless Well, which Brian, Mr. Shreve was alluding to at the park at McCandless Park, where the school is. It's a well that's drilled into the aquifer, the basin. So roughly, depending on how deep the basin is, 400, 500, 600 feet. And
Is this legal?
Yeah, absolutely. There's
No, the reason why I'm asking this question, is this legal, is because I know few people in Hayward okay, who already has this thing in their garages, and they use that water from there. And so that's why I'm asking that, a few of my friends who have this, they recommended this to me over here in Milpitas. And I said, no, I don't want to get into it. And that's why I want to find out, is this legally done or this is illegal thing happening? And the second,
it's certainly legal. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the second question is that, instead of spending $28 billion for that rail system or whatever, that bullet train, whatever we have, why not we use this money to get into getting the water from the sea? It's at least the Californians will not have this issue, because as far as I know, for 43 years in this country, I've been hearing the same thing, that you cut down your water, cut down this, cut down that. Even in the countries where, like in United Arab Emirates, if you go down there, it is more greener, more lush water is. The greenery is there. It's all because they're getting the water from the sea. And it is much better that they don't have no kind of water rationing or anything. So I think that should be the best way to go, since the population over here is increasing a lot. If you go on 237, you'll know how much population has increased. So that is why I'm just trying to find out if that is, the money well spent will be like, that's good for us.
Thank you, Commissioner Salian, for your questions. Just so that we don't get bogged down, Harris, if you could address the questions very quickly so that we can move on, because we have some other business to discuss today.
Sure.
I think actually Commissioner Salian's points are duly noted. The state's investment in high-speed rail versus desalination are beyond the scope for the city of Milpitas at this point. So I'm gonna encourage us to move on. If there are additional questions, we'll take those.
So, Chair Sexton, I do see that Commissioner Kong has her hand raised.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Kong, your question?
Yeah, so I wanted to ask staff, or maybe Linda can answer this, as far as increasing the supply. Is that part of the scope of this water management plan? Just because looking at the chart where we are anticipating an increase of 48% in the next 25 years, just from the increased usage, we have to include making sure that the supplies is also catching up to the projected use. So how is that being communicated? Is that if it's not through this plan, what other plans will consider the augmentation of the water supply, be it through the existing suppliers or be it through the construction or investment into new recycled water structure or other infrastructure, like what Mr. Siddiqui has mentioned about well augmentation? What plan is it under?
Yeah, so
Linda, I can answer that. So the Water Master Plan addresses the population increase and the increase in demand to the 2040, 2045 period. now, obviously, development doesn't happen in a linear pace, so it's the timelines of the projects are not necessarily identified to an exact time frame, but the projects and what we need to invest in to make up for supply and also have a supply sort of a backup and supply, an additional supply resource that we can add to our portfolio, which was the groundwater wells I mentioned, are identified in the water master plan. And the water master plan, similar to the water management plan, was informed by the general plan and then the two specific plans that are currently in the process of being developed, the Metro plan, the Metro Gateway, or Metro, and then the Main Street Gateway. Now, the supply from SFPUC, we are, per our agreement, we're not limited to that supply based on what we consume now. We have additional supply that we can take from SFPUC per our agreement, per our contract with them. However, as part of what will be addressed as part of this water management plan is the Bay Delta issues and the supply limitations from the Bay Delta plan. But that Bay Delta plan allocates water in a drought year based on the information we've given them that includes that population increase and what we anticipate on consuming over the next 20, 25 years.
Thank you. And then a follow-up question would be for the population increase. Do we have policies in place to make sure that new construction includes all the conservation features, including rain capture, using of recycled water line for irrigation, landscaping, policies that reduce water use significantly? Are those going to be incorporated into new construction codes?
Yeah, so right now the current conservation efforts that bring us to a reasonable conservation goal are part of the plumbing code. So California plumbing code requires you to have certain type of toilets, certain types of low water use features. There's the Willow, which is another landscape-oriented ordinance that the state put out that requires you to use micro spray irrigation and drip lines, and you're allowed a certain amount of water given the landscape area that you're looking to landscape. And so those guidelines will continue to be modified. The Willow was updated at least once already, so they do sort of go in step with the climate and the water outlook, the short-term and long-term water outlook, and they do get updated. So that's one of them. And then obviously we have certain components in our ordinance, like for example, for decorative fountains will require that there be a recirculating pump so that it's not a one-way water feed in and out, that the water recirculates and you use it more than once. So those efforts are all there. The increase in demand does include the current conservation guidelines, and then sort of forecasts future guidelines that may come or take shape. So yeah, those are absolutely part of it, part of the demand picture, future demand picture. And then obviously working with planning and sort of looking at the sites, the parcels where there's recycled water. Part of our ordinance is you're required to connect to a recycled water system for your irrigation if there's a recycled water main in front of your development. And like I mentioned earlier, it's not single family homes, but large developments that have landscape areas are required to connect to recycled water as part of our ordinance. So it's a balance of what we can feasibly do and require and what's already in the books in terms of, our ordinance and then outside plans and ordinances and codes that are out there.
Thank you, Mr. Siddiqui.
Chair Sexton, I see that Commissioner Martinez has her hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Commissioner Martinez, your question, please.
I just have a quick question. Is there any plan or ordinance requirement for new construction to install like water filtration systems where, the public could not drink directly tap water, but filtered water and thereby minimize bottled water and the packaging that comes with that?
Water filtration in what sense? I'm sorry.
So drinking water, a lot of people buy bottled water because they don't want to use tap water. With the new construction, the new requirement for, water use or the attention for water use, is there any requirement coming up for filtration systems that would mitigate people purchasing bottled water?
Not that I'm aware of. We have taken some effort on our end as the city and public works, where we funded projects that have put the refillable water bottle refill stations at parks and certain city facilities. But as far as a code requirement, I don't know. Maybe there is one coming, but I'm not certain.
Thank you.
And due to all the federal and state water quality guidelines, tap water is overall, there's more restrictions to make sure that it is safer than some bottled water. So we do just try to encourage that residents do utilize our safe, clean tap water.
And I'll just add, if you receive a paper bill, you should have received an insert in your bill. I know not everyone is fond of reading every single piece of paper in the mail, but we're required to submit a consumer confidence report to all residents in Milpitas. If you receive if you pay your bill online, you'll get an email from our IT folks, and that is available July 1st, and we're currently developing that. And so that essentially gives you it's a pamphlet type. We used to send it paper form, but we've moved to having it available online and then available at certain city facilities to pick up if people want to pick up hard copies. But it gives you a full picture of the water supply, where it comes from, and all the standards that are required to be met: federal, state, local standards, community health standards. And then each water supplier's lab results and data on what they tested for that water source and that they met all the standards. So that will be coming to you, or you should be getting an insert soon if you haven't, and it'll be available July 1st on the city's website. And it meets standards, just in case you're wondering. Okay. Always. It would be quite a significant issue if it didn't. So.
Thank you, Harris. Yes, I remember each year when I get that report in printed form, it's always good to see that the standards that we have in our city, that they exceed all of the required state and federal and local requirements. Did you have? Are you ready to wrap up on your section?
You see that Commissioner Lingle has a question?
Yes.
We have another agenda item as well, but go ahead, Commissioner Lingle.
Real quick, if you're looking for a well to sink, there's a lot of water coming off of Old Evans, Evans Road, just south of Jacqueline. I think it's a spring, a natural spring, but it just keeps right on draining. So, you might want to look there.
Council Member Chua, I see that you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question to Harris maybe, or Linda, on the Valley Water Rainwater Capture rebates slide. If you want to bring that up, please.
Pardon me, I didn't catch that.
Ron, can you bring up the rebates, the slide 14?
Certainly, one second.
My question is, it says $50 per unit on rain barrels. How do they verify that?
Oh, so to clarify, that's $50 per rain barrel. So you can purchase more than one rain barrel. So for all of Valley Water rebates, one thing to keep in mind is you do need to submit an application before you purchase any materials, because you need to get a notice to proceed. So you could actually have you could have more than one rain barrel, and there are certain systems you can kind of set up where the rain barrels kind of connect to each other. So that's just saying that you get up to $50 per rain barrel purchase.
So you do that before you do the installation. How do they verify that you did it? That's my question.
Yeah, so you first put in your application of what you want to purchase, and then you have to actually show, they basically, you have to take a photo of the rain barrel being installed.
Oh, okay.
To verify that it has been set up properly. And they do have on their webpage instructions of how to kind of, make sure you don't get mosquitoes and make sure that it is working properly. But they do the kind of virtual inspection via photos. And we also hold landscape rebate classes with BOSCA, and we hold some specifically on rain barrels and how to really go about setting up a rain barrel. So we do offer these landscape classes for residents as well.
Okay, so it's the same with the water irrigation equipment. You just need to take a picture and send it out to them. The next page, yes.
Yeah, they do confirm some things. They confirm in person, and some they do virtually. We'll have to confirm with Valley Water which one they do for the irrigation equipment. But yeah, they do always make sure, no matter what rebate program you're going through, that it is getting set up and utilized properly.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you
both.
Chair,
Any other questions?
I do not see any other hands raised.
Okay, great. Linda, is there any wrap up on this topic before we move on?
I just thank you everyone for letting us present tonight, and we'll definitely make sure that you have the link to the website when the draft is available.
Thank you very much, Linda and Harris. That was informative and good questions that came up on that.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Salian.
Okay, I was just wondering, if this question is to Siddiqui, I believe that's name, is
Yes.
you guys ever think about this from air to water concept? Air to water concept? Okay, now this is a concept where you have a machinery kept in a big trailer, okay? And it actually condenses the air, gets the water out from there, and filters it and goes through the making it cold, So these waters are like, going through a cycle where it gets filtered, gets cooled, and it coming out through the tap. And this is mostly used in places like in Africa and all those places. But since the humidity in these countries are not high, so it is not so very effective.
We have not looked at that.
Okay.
No.
Okay, it's this particular trailer is quite cheap, and I was thinking about if we could have it in schools or in hospitals where they have their own water system kept over there.
Thank you for your comment, Commissioner Salian. Any other questions Okay, then at this point, I'd like to move on to our next business item, which is the Climate Action Plan update, the section on Community Preparedness and Resiliency Plan. Elaine, will you be covering this?
I'm going to be introducing our climate action plan update consultant team. We've got Hannah Kornfeld, Kai Lord Farmer, Julia, and Honey Walters with us today, and they'll be handling the presentation and getting your feedback. We did include with the agenda packet a executive summary kind of briefing memo to kind of get your juices already flowing. Kai and Hannah will walk you through the presentation, and I do have specific questions where we're looking at to get your feedback on that. So Hannah, take it away. Oh, Kai, can you give me a thumbs up if you can share your screen? Okay, great.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Hannah Kornfeld with Ascent Environmental, serving as the project manager on the consultant side for the Climate Action Plan update. We were just here, it seems, a few weeks ago, presenting on the greenhouse gas reduction measures. And so this Climate Action Plan update includes both the greenhouse gas side of CAPS, but also the adaptation component. So focused not only on reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, but adapting to climate change. As part of that effort, we have been working on a vulnerability assessment, as well as adaptation strategies that will all be wrapped into the CAP update. So we wanted to just give you an overview of our findings from the vulnerability assessment. We gave an overview in the executive summary that was included in your agenda packets, as Elaine just mentioned. And then we do have some draft strategies that we would love to get your opinions on and feedback about. I know that we're a little bit limited on time, so we'll try to jump through this presentation as quickly as we can. And of course, as Elaine said, I'm joined by several colleagues today. Kai Lord Farmer will be leading this presentation as our adaptation lead on the consultant team. So with that, I will hand it over to Kai.
Thanks, Anna. And thank you, Elaine, commissioners, and everyone for having us this evening. Yeah, as Hannah mentioned, I'm serving as the adaptation lead for this project. And I'm going to walk you through kind of a high-level overview of the vulnerability assessment that we conducted for the Climate Action Plan and some exercises on some adaptation strategies. I know we're limited on time, so I'm going to move pretty quickly through these. So first, we're going to just discuss what adaptation planning is, an overview of the vulnerability assessment, and then talk about adaptive capacity, which I'll explain in a little bit, and then discuss the resilience strategies. This graphic is from the Adaptation Planning Guide, which is the state guidance document that jurisdictions are encouraged to use during their climate action planning process around adaptation. And so what we do here is we assess the vulnerabilities, and then we develop adaptation strategies, and then we implement them there in those 4 phases. So for the vulnerability assessment, really quickly here, we look at what the jurisdiction is already exposed to in terms of hazards. We look at the sensitivities in terms of community populations that may be particularly vulnerable, assets, critical facilities, and things like that. And then we analyze what those climate change is going to do to those particular sensitivities. And then we look at the adaptive capacity too, to look at what the city is already doing in terms of preparing for climate-related hazards. It's important to recognize that a lot of what climate change is going to do is exacerbate existing hazards like flooding and wildfire, but the city has already been doing a good deal to prepare for those hazards already. It's just a matter of whether they're prepared for the increase in the severity of those hazards. And then finally, we wrap up with an assessment of the overall vulnerability of each of those hazards from climate change. We use information primarily from a tool called CalAdapt, which is publicly available. So you can go online and type in CalAdapt in Google and look at all of that data that we use. And it's based on global climate modeling, the same that the UN and the IPCC uses. And for this analysis, we use a low and high emission scenario. So what's important to recognize here is that the severity of climate impacts in the future is dependent on what global emissions look like in the future. So if we get global emissions under control, the sooner, the less severe those impacts are going to be in the future. But what we do see from a lot of the data in California and in Milpitas is that there's little variation between a high and low emission scenario through 2050. So it's important to reduce emissions now, but we're basically going to see the effects of historic emissions through the year 2050. So it's important to prepare for those impacts now. So this is a summary of the changes that we've looked at: rises in annual temperature, extreme heat, sea level rise, changes in precipitation, flooding, as well as drought, and then wildfire and grassland fire risk. So in terms of annual maximum temperature, historically, the city has experienced 68 degrees Fahrenheit as an average. But by 2050, that's going to increase by 5 to 6 degrees Fahrenheit. And then by late century, 6 to 9 degrees, depending on global future emissions. And here's just a better look at what that looks like, with the purple shaded areas representing the high emission scenario and the medium emission scenario in that blue there. And so obviously we're all rooting for that lower medium emission scenario. In terms of annual extreme heat days, the threshold that we use here for CalAdapt is 91.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's basically the 98th percentile and above of all recorded temperatures in the city. So really those outliers of really extreme heat in the city. The city's experienced about 4 days per year above 91.6, or basically 92 degrees, but by 2050, that's going to increase to 17 to 20 days, and then drop a little bit under a low emission scenario, 15, but increase significantly to 38 by the end of the century under a high emission scenario if emissions are not taken under control. And what's important to recognize here is that that's an average, but as you can see, starting in around 2050, 2060, we've got these peaks of extremely high heat wave event years. So jumping into the 50s and 60s, so 50 or 60 days per year on these outlier years, with days above 91.6. And then it's important to recognize that the real impacts occur not just from extreme heat, but heat wave events. And so the definition here is 4 or more consecutive heat days, so 4 or more days above 92 degrees. Historically, the city has actually not experienced any of those days, but by 2050, it's projected that there'll be at least one of those events per year. And under a high emission scenario in the future, by 2100, around 3 per year. And here's another picture of the 4 global climate models that they use, and a scatter plot of what it looks like in terms of heat wave events. Alongside the increased frequency, the length of heat waves on average is going to increase as well. Historically, there's been about 2 days consecutively above 92 degrees. But when heat waves do occur in the future, they're going to increase in their length to 4.3 to 4 or 5 days by 2050, and then potentially up to 7 consecutive days by the end of the century. And here's just another graph of a scatter plot of what that looks like in terms of consecutive days. And again, the average is around 4 by the middle of the century, but then again, you've got these outlier events where there could be upwards of 10 consecutive days above 92 degrees. In terms of annual precipitation, there's going to be a slight increase in average annual precipitation, as you can see here. But what's important to recognize is that from what we know from the climate science, that precipitation events, when they do occur, are going to be more intense and occur over a shorter period of time. So when we do get these large atmospheric river events that we get every so often in California, they're going to be more intense. So it's not going to be this prolonged precipitation event over the wet year, but really these one-off events that are bringing up the entire average for the year. So again, you'll see these, the average is going up slightly, but the average is really being pulled up from these spikes in above average wet years. And then sea level rise is likely to impact the city. These are showing sea level rise by 2100. Although there's not a ton of the city that is being impacted by this, it's important to recognize that the combined effect of sea level rise and then large storm events can cause backup into the waterways that run into the San Francisco Bay. So that's really the exposure. That's what's going to happen to the climate. But then what we do is we look at the impacts of climate change as well. And I'm going to run through this pretty quickly here, but in terms of population impacts that we've highlighted and discussed in the vulnerability assessment, respiratory health impacts from wildfire smoke and heat wave events, as well as property damage from wildfires and floods. It's really important to look at sensitive populations, low-income populations, folks who are linguistically isolated, seniors and youth, as well as homeless populations who are particularly vulnerable to these impacts. This is showing data from the CalEnviroScreen tool, which provides an overall score of vulnerability for populations. And so the city is doing generally okay relative to other places in the city, but we do include some information there. In terms of impacts on energy, brownouts caused by extreme heat waves and heat wave events, as well as public safety power shutoffs, as we've all experienced in the past couple of years, from not just wildfire events near the city, but they could be occurring regionally, which have an effect on the grid, which require those shutoffs to occur. And then with increases in heat, there's extreme heat events and annual temperature increases. There's increased demand for energy use for cooling too. So there's a socioeconomic impact there, as well as stress on the grid. And here's just a map of what the energy infrastructure looks like in and around the city too, and what those stresses might look like in different areas from hazards. In terms of stormwater flood impacts, with those larger events, when they do occur from atmospheric river events, there's impacts on system degradation from repeat flows during those large events, on the waterways in the city, and repeat flooding of roadways that are particularly vulnerable. Wastewater disruption in those low-lying areas from large storm events, and then stormwater overflow. What's important to recognize here is that the stormwater management system in the city has been designed based on historic precipitation events and storm event sizes. But as those increase in the future, it compromises the ability of that stormwater management system to manage stormwater during those events. And some sensitivities that we look at here are repeat flood areas, low-lying areas, areas near waterways in the city, large impervious surfaces like parking lot, which are not great at managing water during storm events, and then wastewater facilities. In terms of impacts on transportation and transportation system, roadway and rail degradation from extreme heat events, causing roadway buckling or rail buckling during those really extreme heat events. And then degradation of roadways from flooding as well. The subbase of the roads or railway networks can degrade over time from repeat flooding and cause potential risk there as well. And then emergency access during wildfire events, evacuation route events, and evacuation events from flooding as well. So those are impacts on the physical environment and the population, but there's also going to be potential impacts on emergency services themselves and their ability to respond to the severity of future hazard events. So increased demand in general for emergency services during large storm events, extreme heat events, as we've all been experiencing, this past summer, as we move into the next summer here. And then wildfire smoke. So even if wildfires aren't a big risk for the city locally, for large portions of the city, rather, impact from wildfire smoke and respiratory health can be an issue, cause increased demand for emergency services and increased hospital visits. And then some sensitivities here to think about are the staff capacity of emergency services to be able to respond to those events, compromise of emergency service routes, and their ability to access the population that they need to. And then again, wastewater facilities. This is a map of critical facilities in the city. And we include this in a vulnerability assessment just to recognize and locate where these particularly vulnerable facilities are, but also things like childcare facilities and infrastructure in the city. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Let me know if you have any questions, but in the little time that we do have, we really do want to hear your feedback based on past experiences historically or in the last couple of years. What do you see as the city's biggest vulnerabilities to climate change? And have there been?
How would you like us to respond to that in terms of just verbally giving that to you, or do you have a poll that you want to take?
We don't have a poll necessarily. I think we just love to hear your feedback. We have someone taking notes, so we can collect all of that information.
Okay. Well, I'll just go ahead and kick it off, and hopefully the other commissioners will. And Councilmember Chua will jump in also. So I see that the stormwater and flood impacts to be really high, as well as the energy impacts. And but of course, I would not say that the transportation impacts and emergency services impacts or the population impacts are low either. But those are the two that sort of bubble to the top for me.
I think tacking on to that question number 2, just to kind of save time here, thinking about recent events in the city, if there's anything unique that you experienced in terms of an impact that was kind of a surprise or was a blind spot for the city, we'd like to know about that.
So I'll wade in. I think it's the extreme heat. You couple, again, the extreme heat is typically going to be coupled with fires, which typically couples with power outages. So making those three together really raises the danger on folks, in their homes with no help to deal with the extreme heat that's coming this way. So I wonder if, we can do more to, ensure that we have emergency services, the community center has power, certain, the schools or something like this, something near your neighborhood where you can actually go to stay out of the heat. If you're elderly, it's going to be critical. The other thing though is, just the overall grid itself. I wonder if we can look to techniques that folks in Phoenix and Tucson are using to bolster their grid in the event of the extreme heat. So I think those are really going to be quite something. That's my 2 cents.
Commissioner Lingle, could you expand a little bit on what the city of Phoenix is doing?
Oh, I have no idea, but they live with this every day, you know, for, you know, 100-day heat waves.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. I thought that you were referring to a particular method of handling.
Yeah, I really don't know. I just wonder, you know, how they're able to, you know, stay up and you know, keep their grid intact. I wonder if there's you know, pointers there.
Yeah, I know to a certain degree, because the public safety power shutoffs are becoming more prevalent and are projected to occur more frequently in the future. Utilities like PG&E are figuring out ways to basically divide up the grid into smaller pieces, so that when they do have to enact those power shutoffs, they can do it to smaller portions.
I'm going to jump in right now. I share the opinion that wildfire is probably the biggest vulnerability. And I'm also concerned that with wildfire, we have smoke, and it also degrades the air quality and impacts a lot of vulnerable population in our city, especially Milpitas have a lot of young population as well as very old population, and those are very vulnerable people. And with fire, there has been a lot of need for evacuation, emergency evacuation, and I don't know if we have enough shelters or place for our folks to get relief during those times. So that is my input.
Great, thanks for that.
Any other comments?
Well, I have one more. That Cal Adapt website is fantastic. It really is interesting. So thanks for the pointer.
Sure, yeah.
It's very scary.
It's a little scary, but our plan is the first step in becoming more resilient.
Executive summary that you provided, was very well written, and it certainly gives a sobering and serious summary of where we are. That we have some challenges for the city to be able to plan a risk mitigation for all of these effects. Councilmember Chua, sorry, you were going to say something?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just looking at the good input. Those are really some of the challenges that the city is facing, you know, during the climate change, the heat wave, and the power outage, wildfire, smoke, and the vulnerable residents. And also in terms of, we do have an emergency preparedness team. And we did at one point, we did use the Milpitas Sports Center as a shelter. They have that mapped out. We have a master plan when there is a big disaster, if you will. We do have an emergency preparedness, and we have a central command post, and those are all laid out. But I'm sitting here, and I was kind of like, it's interesting because I was looking at the length of heat wave, 2 days, and in 2040 it will be 4 days. And I don't know if everybody knows, I did some fundraising for the unhoused, and as of last night we have about $13,000. If you have $100 per night, that's about 130 nights. And it's interesting when you're on the council seat, you kind of see everything else. Like the housing department did an update on the unhoused services, and we have 64 unhoused residents. And I was just doing my math. I said, they have 2 nights which is perfect for the heat wave for a duration of 2 days. So that's where my thinking is going. And I'm glad I have this data with me, and also the feedback from the housing department on the number of unhoused that we have. So thank you. Good presentation, by the way. I can use it. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Chua. I don't know if at this point you're looking for any sort of suggestions on how
I
to-
can just, I can run through 4 kind of key strategies that we're thinking about, and we've sent over a list to the city to consider as well, but I did just want to kind of skip through these pieces to talk
Yes, I think that the adaptive capacity is important to take a look at.
Yeah. So the adaptive capacity piece, as Councilmember Chula was saying, is essentially what we do is we look at what's already being done by the city, which is a lot in terms of the emergency response plan and the evacuation shelters. And so our assessment is really looking at, is there enough capacity in the city to address the increases in the severity and the frequency of those events? And in some places they are, and some places they're not, and we go into that. So we've built some strategies or suggested strategies around impact categories, and I'm not going to go into those there, but I just wanted to recognize that we have a strategy focused specifically on vulnerable populations like the homeless and like the elderly and youth, and identifying key areas in the city where those populations exist, doing outreach and education with them, and making sure that they have the resources that they need when heat waves do occur. So that's one strategy. Reducing flood risk. We need to, not just the city, but the Bay Area in general needs to look at what future large storm events are going to look like under climate change and update the stormwater management system to better address that, so that development moving forward is not using an outdated modeling for their stormwater management. That's another one. Robust emergency services. So we kind of went into that more, making sure that evacuation routes are analyzed correctly and that there's enough capacity and staff to deal with emergency services or hazard events. And then this last piece is pretty exciting that someone was referring to, is this resilient energy resources. So there's kind of a crossover between GHG reductions and resilience here in creating microgrids or backup power systems, with including photovoltaic at emergency services facilities, as well as evacuation shelters. So if the power grid does go down, you've got these independent hubs where power is still reliable and you can still operate as a city. And I think the city is doing a good amount of that already, from what I've heard. So I just wanted to highlight those. And I think the last question, I know we're about at time, is if there are any strategies that you've seen other cities doing well that you'd like us to include in the plan, or any other strategies that you think would be good for the city.
Well, I'm not aware of any specific strategies that exist in other cities, but I think that being able to give tips and suggestions on how to make it through a heat wave for folks to be able to sort of think ahead and get ready for the heat wave. I mean, it could be something just as simple as, being able to think about, is your roof the type of roof that, and some buildings and some homes have flat roofs or painted roofs, that the roof can be painted a lighter color that reflects the heat, and so that there's not as much heat buildup in that building. That can help with the during a heat wave, it's not, the interior temperature doesn't get as high. But there's just a whole list of different things that people can do both ahead of time, but also during the heat wave. Like, something as simple as, if it's feeling really warm, if you put your feet in a shallow pan of water, you actually have a much better cooling effect that happens to your body so that you can withstand the heat better than without that sort of cooling effect going on. So, there's just all sorts of different things that can be done to make people a little bit more comfortable and resilient to the higher temperatures that we're going to be seeing.
So great. Yeah, that's great. So providing some tips and education to citizens before events to make sure that they're prepared when those events do occur. Okay. Anything else in terms of ideas that they've seen other cities doing, strategies that were missing, things that were going on in the city in the past two years when they were experiencing impacts that they saw the city doing well?
One thing to suggest here, it's a little bit of a long shot, but a leap. But I would like to, I don't know, strive to get businesses involved here. Is there a possibility of setting up grants or something like this to fund and sponsor corporations to help in developing new ideas on how to stay cool, or I don't know, develop new strategies for microgrids, or hydrogen production, something like this. Again, if we can, I'm a big fan of Milpitas. If we can attract new companies into Milpitas under this kind of theme, I think that'd be fantastic.
Great. Yeah. I know just off the top of my head, there's some cities down in Southern California that provide cool zones. So businesses offer themselves as air-conditioned, free cool zones that folks can come into during heat wave events, and that's supported by the business community as well. But to your other point too, yeah, materials, the need for new heat-resistant materials in all types of areas of the built environment is something that definitely needs to happen.
Yeah, and it's that kind of innovation. Can we do more to help companies innovate? Our companies here in Milpitas and in the Bay Area certainly. But
Thanks, Commissioner Lingle. I definitely see that innovation and new technology as one area that could help in the long term. But certainly making use of the materials and the techniques that we have today can be implemented in terms of, when we have heat waves and, the need to close our windows when it's the air quality is bad outside because of the wildfire smoke and things like that. Just knowing how to deal with how to manage the opening of your windows at certain times of the day in order to draw a cool draft through the home, and then close those windows so that you're not then allowing the midday or afternoon heat to come in, can really help the comfort level as well as lower the energy costs. Because I can see that if we're having higher temperatures and longer episodes of these high temperatures, that people would be more reliant on their air conditioning, but that drives up their energy bills tremendously. And so, how to be able to manage through hot days without running your AC 24/7, that would be able to, help people to come up with ways of addressing the problem. Are there any other questions or suggestions for Kai? Councilmember Chua?
Thank you, Chair. I was actually, before Commissioner Lingle asked about the grant, the reason why I asked about the water rebates and the what's the other one?
The rainwater harvesting
Yes.
barrels.
And I was looking at the presentation, if I can find any from this segment of the presentation. I'm sitting here and thinking, because of the ARPA, American Relief Plan Act, the funding that we'll get there, I was actually sitting here and looking at the rebates from Valley Water, and I was thinking, maybe we can match the rebate to entice more folks to use this type of conservation or in saving water. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, and yes, Councilmember Chu, and we already do that. So the base rebate, for example, for the landscape rebates from Valley Water is $1 per square foot, and the city of Milpitas already matches it. So we've increased it to $2 for Milpitas residents. Residents in San Jose don't get that, so they're at still just the $1. So we already do that. Valley Water is going to be adding another $1, so it's going to be $3 starting in July. And then same for the rain barrels. I think we add $35 to that rebate to make it the $55. So we are already doing that.
I was going to add that to my email to Ashwini tonight, because she asked me.
No, we've already got you covered there.
Okay, good. So I was looking for a presentation on this segment as well to see, is there anything in what is Kai's presentation that we can do in terms of funding. We cannot do the high level funding for innovation. That's too costly and that's too long range. I mean, immediate is I'm looking for. And that's what I was looking at the presentation, but I didn't see any. So if you guys think of anything, just email Elaine and she'll share it with me.
Councilmember Chu, so you're saying ideas of providing financial assistance or incentives
right, our grants, because I'm trying to maximize the ARPA funding, get some money out of that to help the climate change somehow.
Okay. So yeah, but yeah, what eligible uses of the American Rescue Act funds can we allocate or design for some sort of climate action related grant or something else for our businesses or our residents is what you're thinking. Okay.
Exactly. Because tomorrow
Councilmember Chu, I think
the executive team is meeting with the grants. So I'm looking at this commission to tell me what those are. That they will still determine if it's eligible or not, but anything that you can think of that we can do or I can recommend to do. But you already answered my question on the doubling up the Valley Water, so that's good. So there you go. If you think of anything, let me know. We still have until June 1st So I'm hoping this team can give me something to go there and ask for money. Okay. You don't have to answer now. Just
It's a
tell
great
Elaine.
challenge. Any commissioners with ideas on how to spend some money, you
Yes.
can email me and I'll forward them to Councilmember Chua.
Yes.
Thank
Let's
you very
spend some money to help climate change.
Yeah,
Okay.
so time to put on our thinking hats and
Yes,
make
please.
some suggestions that
And
hopefully
oh,
we can
oh,
find funding.
think big. Okay, think big. Don't let any amount deter you. Just do it. Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Chua. Are there any other suggestions for strategies for resiliency or things we should be considering in the adaptation and resiliency chapter for the climate action plan?
Well, certainly we need to build more capacity for resiliency because the changes that the vulnerability assessment has shown that we should be expecting over the next few years are quite severe. And so we have to both build in some more capacity to respond to those vulnerabilities, but then also do the other side, which is do what we can to reduce the greenhouse gases so that the effects won't be the really bad scenario. We should go for the least bad scenario possible as quickly as possible.
And Elaine, if I can just jump in for a minute here, just in terms of the climate action plan, this is certainly not the only opportunity for us to receive feedback on adaptation strategies and what should be considered in the CAP. So we will have a second public workshop. We had one already on the greenhouse gas measures, so we will have one more. The date is not set yet, but we also have our CAP dashboard that is available online. And we do have some surveys specifically about vulnerability and resiliency. So if you're looking for additional questions to kind of think about how to best frame this, I would invite you to check that site out and please give us your feedback on that survey as well.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Are there any other comments before we close out this agenda?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Admana.
Yeah. Has the city in the past considered planting more trees or increase vegetations around the city, like around the buildings, to help reduce the temperatures?
Yes, actually, we do have an urban forest management plan that does include plans and goals for planting net new trees, so new trees around the city. We did see some impacts from the last drought where we're still replacing trees that didn't survive the drought, but we do have plans for planting new trees. And I think part of the climate action plan update will also consider additional goals and targets for trees as part of our efforts to sequester more carbon too.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes, Commissioner Salian.
Yeah, I have one question. And the question is, like, has the city changed the percentage of yard what we're supposed to have? Because I remember way back in 10 or 15 years ago, we used to have a percentage, about 60% of the lot has to be yard. And the rest 40% you can do the buildings on it. But has that been changed now?
I believe, Commissioner Salian, for new construction, there is what we call the model water efficient landscape ordinance that specifies what areas of a new development need to be landscaped and what that landscape is. Typically water efficient landscaping and other approaches. So we are trying to reduce yards and water hungry lawns.
Okay, the yards are reduced to what percentage of the building though?
You know what? I don't know that specifically. Let me get back to you. I can get back to you on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions at this time? No? Well, thank you very much, Hannah. Appreciate the update. And if there are any other suggestions, questions on this topic, please direct them to Elaine so that by email so that she can forward them on to Hannah. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you, Hannah. Thanks, Kai and Honey and Julie and the rest of the Ascent team. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's see. So at this point, we're on the agenda item for city liaison reports. So do Councilmember Chua, do you have any reports to share with us?
There's a lot, so I'm just gonna go through it fast and be selective. And as I was talking earlier about our American Rescue Plan Act, and President Biden passed into law $1.9 trillion for us to recover from the pandemic. And each city, based on a formula and based on population, Milpitas is getting about $16.9 million. So that's what I'm talking about. Because the different categories like infrastructure, housing, climate change, and you guys are up there in the hierarchy. So that's why I'm really asking for any ideas. So anyway, so last meeting, we all gave our input on suggestions on how we will spend this funds. So for me, I asked for funding for ADUs, more ADUs for Milpitas to address affordable housing, grants to small businesses, especially daycare and restaurants, to help them out because they were hardly hit by the pandemic. I also asked for, hopefully this will get approved. I don't know if it's in the criteria of the ARP, but free curbside trash pickup. So I would like to have that for us, maybe like once a year or twice a year. I also want to create workforce of 20 interns a year. We have to spend the 16.9 million in 4 years. We have to spend all of it. So I'm looking for 20 interns per year for 4 years. That would be great. It's college graduates and undergrads. Undergrads and grad students. So that'd be good. And also I want to rehabilitate Main Street by giving grants to businesses to enhance their storefront. So I'm thinking of like 15,000 per store. So that'll be good. And also help the Milpitas Chamber of Commerce because they were hardly hit. They lost a lot of membership and they can't do fundraising, which is a big source of their income. So I'm asking for 100,000 for them as well. And when I want to support software for HRIS and also software to strengthen our cyber defense. So those are my priorities right now. And also the other council member suggested about rent relief, mortgage relief, water relief, mental health, domestic violence, and economic development. Those are the ones. And I was talking to earlier, so these things are intertwined. They're all related. Like the housing department reported the first report on statistics on our unhoused residents. Currently, there are 64, and we have about 18 homeless camps, and 26 of them have been assessed, because you have to be assessed so the county can place you to different housing. But in between the assessment and the placement for housing, there are several steps still, which can take years. So we're trying to ask our county partners to help us expedite placing our unhoused. And what else? And Elaine, did you see my email?
No.
Oh, okay. I want to share something. I don't know how to share, but I'm gonna try. Is that okay? I sent you 2 things.
Oh, I did not see an email from you today at all.
Oh, during the meeting. Did you see it? Did you check your email?
My email's open and I don't have it in my inbox.
Okay, that's all right. I just want to share this briefly because this
Okay,
one.
I think you should be able to share your screen, Councilmember Chu. I think
Do
all
you
the
guys see
panelists.
this? Do you guys see this? No.
Not yet.
Oh,
Oh. Okay, let me do a share screen. Let me try this. Oh.
Roman, I have a question for you.
There. Okay.
Just a minute, Commissioner Salian. Councilmember Chua, I still don't see anything being shared.
Oh, really? I can't find it. Okay.
Why don't you send it to me again, Councilmember Chu, and I can email the commission after the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Salian, you had a question?
Yes, I have a question. It's regarding the ADU which you just spoke about. The question is, from the moment you submit the drawings to the city, how long does it take for the city to review it and get back to the citizens?
There is an ADU Mondays where you can schedule a 30-minute consultation with the team. You can ask all the questions about ADUs, whether it's application, permitting, anything, and they will guide you. The purpose of the ADU Mondays is to expedite this type of a request. So I would suggest please use that and let me know. You can email me directly, tell me how long it took you, how long they took to satisfy your request.
Okay, they already took about 13 to 14 months.
When was this? So that's a long time ago.
No, it has been given to them and I still did not get any kind of a feedback from the people over there. I think it is.
Okay.
So I don't want to name them, but
Commissioner Salian, maybe you'd want to, I think that gets into the building and permitting, which is outside of this meeting. So would you like to take that up with maybe Councilmember Chua separately?
Yeah, I can do that. That's not a big problem, but it is from the planning people. I still did not get it. It's almost been 13 months.
So Commissioner Salian, we're not discussing our building permits at this meeting or the length of time that it takes for responses. And I think Councilmember Chua was specifically talking about ADUs and not for other building permits.
No, it is for ADU. The permits are for ADU. It's not for putting up a skyscraper here. It is for the ADU. We gave that permit, I mean, the drawing, we gave everything.
Yeah.
And for
Commissioner Salian, because you're talking about one specific application rather than a policy or a guideline, then perhaps you'd want to talk to Councilmember Chua or the permitting department directly.
Please email me, Commissioner Salian. please
Okay.
email me.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lingle, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Let's see. It's really interesting, Councilmember Chua, to hear about this. You know, it's a tough set of choices on, you know, how to best spend this this I don't know, funding from the government, from the federal government. It's great to hear that we've got this. But what we're aiming for is, you know, we're trying to get jobs, generate jobs, but at the same time, you know, taking into account sustainability. You know, my suggestion would be to invest it somehow into, you know, solar panel installation. If there is a way to, you know, provide grants to incentivize, you know, more corporations and residences to install, then, you know, and, you know, if there are, you know, corporations, you know, installation corporations here in the city, if there's a way to actually, you know, help them out, because again, that is a really jobs maker right there in you know, installation. So that's a.
Are you talking also about job training for solar installation?
Exactly. Yeah. That would be, that's another aspect. Yeah.
I would suggest to write an email to Elaine, and then Elaine will send it back to me, so I have everything.
Okay.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah, and that's
an example of what Councilmember Chua is looking for. And so if you can put the idea in writing and send it on to Elaine, that would be great. Thank you.
I will. Thank you.
Okay, so
thank you, Chair.
You're welcome, Councilmember Chua. We've completed our agenda for today. So at this time, seeing no additional items on the agenda, I call for the adjournment of this meeting, and thank you for your time. We've been at this for about 2 hours, so I appreciate you spending your evening discussing the business of the city of Milpitas and all our efforts to make this a better place to live and work. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.